Okay, I needed to move this video up on the list because so many people asked me about infrared photography, and actually it's incredibly easy. Back in the days of film, back in photography school, we were shooting infrared. I mean, it's still the same today, but now you're not shooting with film. Instantly you can preview what the hell you've got. Infrared photography was a real pain in the crotch, and you had to waste a lot of film to get the right exposure, and whatever you shot, you had to bracket to get out the right shot. 1 out of 7 bracketed shots would turn out to be accurate, and there was a good bit of, technical intuition in addition to the composition that had to be made. But I mean, I haven't shot infrared now for the past 5 or 6 months, but I used my D700 for it. But I hadn't used the infrared on the Nikon D750. I only recently got, a few months ago, the Nikon D750. I thought, well, I'd give it a whirl, and I'd actually read, and it's called the book on the Nikon D750. It's a published book, and I forget the guy's name who wrote it, but this reminds me of someone else that does a lot of reviews online. I don't think they actually do the stuff that they write about. They'll review crud that they've never had their hands on, and this book flat out says, oh, the Nikon D750 is not good for infrared photography, and it is true. It's the hot mirror. Some people call it the hot mirror, but it's the infrared pass filter that sits right in front of the sensor on the Nikon D750 and all the other Nikons. Some are better than others. The older ones are really good. And of course, you can also buy a camera that's been modified, like an old D3200. You can buy one for like $550. It's had the sensor removed off of it, so all the camera will do is shoot infrared. So the camera's been permanently FUBAR'd, and it's just made for infrared, which is fine, but I mean, paying $550 for that, give me a break. But it does do an awesome job. Now you can actually get these little filters like this. I've got a few of them in different sizes. This is a Hoya infrared filter. It's a R72. This little filter is $36 from B&H. The larger ones are much more expensive. Like my 77mm, I think, cost me like $90. I think they're cheaper now. Now you can't see a damn thing through it. If you go out in really bright sunlight, you'll actually see a very dark red tint. So it blocks nearly 100%, well, not technically 100%, nearly 100% of visible light. So when you go to screw this on the front of your camera, there's no way you're going to shoot in aperture, shutter priority, or manual mode. It's just not going to happen. But infrared photography is really damn simple. A lot of people, if you actually type in videos on doing infrared photography, they really complicate stuff. You got to have a tripod, obviously. By the way, the Nikon D750 is the cat's ass. Contrary to every report I've read, and I think I'm the first person to report this, I may not be, the Nikon D750 is the cat's ass when it comes to shooting infrared photography. Now, a lot of infrared photography on a non-modified camera, you can have some serious high ISO and a long time exposure, like 10, 12, 8 seconds minimum. On the D750, I was using the 35mm f2. Okay, it's a D-series Nikkor. I was shooting at ISO 800, I believe. You can check my shot. I got the links below on Flickr too. Now, don't make fun of the pictures because they're just boring test shots of the D750. I hadn't tested its infrared capability yet, so they're just boring test shots. So you can take a look at the links below. But the D750 performs excellently. I had ISO like 800, maybe it was 1200. And my time exposure was a hair over 2 seconds, which is phenomenal. I mean, I initially thought it would need at least at the ISO 8, like a 10-second exposure. Way overexposed. It was a bright sunny day, which is what you should be shooting in the infrared. So how do you do infrared photography? To go ahead and buy one of these filters. Now, another thing you're going to notice is that if you got a lot of lenses, some of the lenses actually have an infrared coating on them, and it's not anything that you'll see during normal photography, but what will happen is if you try to do infrared photography with the lens, like a lot of the older manual focus 50s and whatnot, the center of the shot will be heavily overexposed. It'll be super bright. It'll just look like, well, something's wrong with the lens or something. No, it's the lens. It's the coating on the lens that you can't see during normal photography. So you're going to have to try another lens. You're going to have to find out which lens doesn't have an issue. I knew for a fact, since that's the lens I always use, but basically you're going to use a wide, like a 28 or a 35 anyway. So if you got the 35mm f2, use that. Okay, that's really most infrared photography is taken with a 28 or a 20 or a 35 anyway. So if you got that lens, use it. But you'll have to test them to find out. Okay. Just mount it on your camera. Now, a lot of the other idiots, since you can't actually see anything through the filter, you can't autofocus through it, you can't meter through it, you have to throw your camera into a manual, obviously. Okay, now a lot of people will actually say, they have it on the tripod, of course, which you do, you need to have your camera on a tripod. They'll sit there and they'll compose their scene, and then they'll throw it on manual, so that the next time they take a shot, when they drop on the infrared filter, that you don't need to do anything other than bracket your exposure or verify and readjust your exposure time. You don't even have to do any of that, like the 35mm. I mean, all I have to do, especially if it's a scenic shot, it's like, well, your lenses have these little numbers on here for feet, so I kind of like throw it at infinity and crank it back, just a few millimeters, and then I've got the shot at f8 anyway. So I can actually spot through the camera and visualize where 35mm is, so it doesn't have to be that complicated. Just throw your camera when you need to, okay? It's a digital camera anyway, you're not shooting film for Christ's sakes. And, just visualize what the 35mm is going to be as far as your composition, and put the camera on manual. Just adjust your lens to infinity, and crank it back a couple, 3mm. Okay, at f8, f6, everything's going to be in focus anyway. If the composition's slightly off after you've taken the shot, just check your camera. It's like, okay, I'm going to move it a little bit that way. But you don't have to do this filter on, filter off, filter on. Yeah, you see people telling people how to do that with infrared photography. That's BS. Anyway, this is kind of the most fun. I love infrared photography. I've been at it for quite a while. I've had 3 of these filters collecting dust now for the past 5 months. One I've used extensively, which is this one. But infrared photography is a ton of fun. I mean, you think it's just for landscape. It's not. You could do so much with infrared photography. I've been making some more videos. You can actually use one of these filters over top of like a Surefire light, and you can be in complete daylight. You'll never see anything come out of the front if you actually have this filter in the front of a flashlight, a strong flashlight. But you can actually start painting, okay, with what is to everybody else invisible light. You're painting with infrared, so you can do exposures late at night and actually paint with infrared. No one else will see the light. I mean, what are you taking a picture of? It's totally dark. Well, I'm painting with infrared. I mean, portraiture shots are divine. I mean, it's really something to pad your portfolio with. They're incredible shots. Now, adjusting white balance. I think my phone's ringing in the back room there. I wonder what I heard back there. You go in your menu settings, go up to photo shooting menu. And go to white balance, and at the end there's a preset. Okay, so let me go back for you. So you're going to go to photo shooting menu, okay, and you're going to go to white balance, and then you can choose color temperature or preset manual. What you do is before you screw on your filter, just take a reference. You can do it anywhere. Take a picture of a nice green layer of grass, okay, or a bright under sunlight, not subdued light. Just perfectly illuminated sunlight grass. Okay, fill up the whole frame with it. Set that as your white balance. So you're setting your white balance as green grass. It's like, okay, so it's already set. Click OK, so your white balance preset is there. You can adjust it in post under color balance, but it's easier to do it this way because your white balance has already been set such that all your green foliage and your grass is going to turn out white. Therefore, all you have to do in post is adjust contrast balance. You can set the white balance there, but you've already done most of the white balance settings on your camera. Okay, photo shooting menu, white balance, preset manual, and it's going to ask you can hit the minus button, for example, in B750, to select an image. Okay, you're going to select the image, and it's going to be the image you just took of the brightly illuminated green grass or the green foliage. Make sure it fills up the entire frame. Okay, that's your white balance. So that will actually shift how it actually captures the green grass and the foliage. Now, if you're going to do indoor, not indoor, but portraiture shots, I mean, you're going to need to play around with the white balance to get the exact tone you want. But this actually eliminates a lot of the issues you have to do so far as setting your white balance in post and Photoshop, or whether you're using, I use Capture One and Photor, which is a really simple program. I'm going to just do a really quick conversion. Photor is really easy. It's a free application too, by the way, Mac or PC. Infrared photography is not difficult. So what blows me away is that all these people have always said, even back in the day, it's like, well, first you gotta, check your composition and focus and throw your camera in the manual. No, you don't. Your lens has got markings on here for distance. Set it in infinity. I assume you're going to take a landscape shot of some sort. So it's further than 15 feet away. So just set your lens on infinity, screw on the filter, and judge roughly where it's at. I mean, you're not shooting film. You're not wasting anything other than a couple seconds. It's like the composition's off. Loosen your tripod head and realign your camera a little bit. Easy greasy. So for $36 for like the 52 millimeter, it's like $48 for the 72 millimeter. It's like $80 or something for the 77 millimeter. It's called the Hoya. I forget these R72. Yeah, the R72 Hoya infrared filter. Like I said, you got to throw your camera manual, manual focus. Your camera can't meter through this. You can't see anything through this. Okay, nothing. Well, you can see a really dim red light, but that's it. But infrared photography is easy. Check the links below. And there's so much. I'll do some more videos on neat tips and tricks, and I'll show you some of the neat stuff you can do with infrared photography. But if you want to see some examples of how wonderful infrared photography is, just go to the Flickr page for infrared, and check the links below, the test shots I did. But I was actually pissed that so many people said that the Nikon D750 is bad on infrared. Not only is it not bad on infrared, it's absolutely freaking awesome on infrared. The exposure time at 2 seconds, was 2.6 seconds actually, is absolutely incredible. Typical exposure times at 1200 ISO or 800 ISO, at aperture 5.6 or f8 is somewhere between 8 and 10 and 12, 13 seconds, depending on how strong the infrared, the hot mirror is, the infrared filter on the front of right before the sensor is. And 2.5 seconds is really damn fast for the Nikon D750. So the guy that wrote that on the Nikon D750, the official guide to the Nikon D750, I've got the name in the book back there on the computer. I can't remember what he said. It's bad, and it's not. It's absolutely ridiculous. I had some other tips and tricks that I've actually used before, like using a larger filter with a bag, so it actually can compose to the lens. All you have to do is just slip it on the front of the lens and actually expose that way. You don't need a remote release to do that. I mean, you got your camera on the tripod, just hit the shutter release like you do taking a normal shot. I'll make some more videos on infrared, but it's not hard. I mean, just buy one of these filters and you can really make some fascinating shots. And infrared is not hard, okay? It's not. It's actually pretty damn easy. All you're talking about is throwing your camera into manual mode, screwing on that damn filter, and adjusting your distance on your lens. Your lens does have distance markings on it for a reason. So anyway, thanks for watching.